the Jack Spring Electric Keel Newsmaker Hotline, Mr. Matthew Block. Mr. Matthew, welcome to Keel. Let me start here. I don't have your exact or precise position in front of me, but if I just said you're like one of the governor's lawyers, that wouldn't be too far off the mark, would it?
And that would not be too far off the mark. Good morning, Robert, Aaron. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I heard the confusion before the break. I'm most certainly not with the AG's office. I'm with the governor's office, and I'm his executive counsel. So I'm
okay.
Executive
exactly
counsel
right.
is
I'm one of his
very
lawyers.
Executive counsel is very impressive.
Matthew, you disagree with the Attorney General's opinion with regard to the mask mandate. Explain why Jeff Landry is off the mark here.
Well, first, I'm not the only one. I mean, the Attorney General disagrees with his own opinion, because if you look back at a press conference that the Attorney General came to back in the beginning of March, somewhere around the middle of March, he said the exact opposite of what he said in his opinion. He said that he believed that the governor's orders at that point in time, which were significantly more restrictive than the current orders, were constitutional and advisable, and that he supported them. And so now he's changed his tune in his opinion. I'm not sure why, and you'd have to ask him why he thinks that he is of a different mindset now than he was back in March. But the main reason is that what we are seeing is a significant spike again in the number of cases that we have in this state, and the number of hospitalizations, and unfortunately in the deaths that we have. And so we know that what was done back in March and April, unfortunately, is a significant step of what was taken by the governor. We know it worked, and it slowed this down. But what we saw, and this was not just in Louisiana, but it's across the South, from Florida to Arizona, is sometime around Memorial Day weekend that they're with the restrictions moving into phase 2, that we saw a lot of people out and about doing things like going to bars, et cetera, especially young people in this 18 to 30 age group. And as the White House told us when they came down here last week, that it was a seeding of coronavirus all over again throughout Texas and Mississippi and Arkansas and Alabama, Florida, which is why you've seen all of those states take the exact same measures that the governor is taking, in terms of looking at crowd sizes, in terms of looking at masks or face coverings, and then having restrictions on bars.
Mr. Matthew, pardon me. Part of Attorney General Landry's opinion is something to the effect that the governor's mandate may not be enforced with criminal or commercial penalties. It occurs to me that the governor really didn't threaten criminal and or commercial penalties, did he?
That's correct. And look, this is not a step that the governor took lightly, and it's one that he gave a significant amount of consideration to. States like Texas and Alabama, they have within their orders, they have that it is subject to either a fine or a imprisonment order for individuals to not, if individuals are not wearing a mask. What the governor did is he tried to be more nuanced about it, and has a requirement for individuals to wear face coverings. But he also said that the way that we can really make sure that we get some enforcement on this is to require businesses to have policies that if you're going to have the members of the public in your stores, in your offices, et cetera, that you are to require that individuals come in wearing face coverings unless they fit one of the exceptions that's in the order. And I think what we've seen, I'm sure what you've seen, is that there's been a significant increase in the number of people wearing masks or face coverings over the last 10 days or so, that this has been in effect, and this is the way out of this, in that the White House now, the coronavirus task force, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, all of the public health experts in the state are very clear now that Look, admittedly, there was mixed messaging about face coverings at the beginning of this when everybody was just learning. Certainly, we all were just learning how this virus is transmitted and what the risks are. But now the public health opinion is unanimous that by wearing face coverings, and Aaron, in the read-in that you had about the two hairstylists in Missouri, that is a perfect example of a what could have been a super spreading event where dozens of people could have become infected, but they didn't because the two hairstylists were wearing face coverings.
Excuse me,
we're seeing
Matthew,
more and more data to show that is a way that we can really slow down the spread of this virus.
We had a conversation with Commissioner of Administration Darden not too long ago, and also Chief of Staff Mark Cooper. And they both said at the time, and this is maybe within the last 30 days, that the governor was not considering a return to phase 1. Now, we were in phase 2 then, and we kind of on this station call this phase 1.5. The governor's going to talk a little bit later today or tomorrow. Is there a chance, because there's rumors, we may not be going back to phase 1, but we may be moving toward phase 1.25? What can you tell us? What's in the offing?
Well, first, it's been one of those things since the very beginning of this where the rumors about what the governor's actions are going to be have taken a lot of fanciful turns. I mean, I remember calls we received back in March and April about, the governor imposing martial law and things like that, which were never considered, never discussed, and yet I was getting calls left and right from people saying that they heard that's what the governor was going to do. I can assure you most of the rumors out there are not coming at all from the governor or his administration. What I can tell you is that the governor is going to follow a process, and the process is going to be driven by what the data shows and what the experts recommend. What we do know, though, is that this order has not been in place for face masks, for bars, and for the crowd restrictions down to 50 for a significant enough period of time for the governor to be able to make an evaluation, for the public health experts to be able to make an evaluation of, is it making a difference? We know that our cases are increasing. I mean, we've had in just the last week, we've had over 13,584 new cases, new people infected. But the governor wants to make sure that we have an opportunity to see if the measures he is taking are working, or if they're not working, what else is it that we can do to slow things down? Because what this has been about from the very beginning, we know that this virus is going to be with us for a long time, and likely until we get some sort of herd immunity or a vaccine. But the thing that we can't have is we can't have where we are desperate for hospital beds in this state, and that's where we were back in March and April, and it's where we're approaching in some places. In Region 7, which is the Shreveport area, we are starting to see some significant pressure on our hospitals. We're seeing that in Lafayette and Lake Charles and even Baton Rouge.
But why not just close down? Why not just target your restrictions too? And we've talked about Mr. J and Mr. Mark about this also. Why doesn't the governor, or has that been considered, targeting restrictions at certain areas of the state, specifically different public health department regions?
Well, look, that's a great question, and it's one that we've obviously given a lot of consideration to. And if you look at the governor's order involving the face coverings, what it allowed for is, if you are a parish that is not one of the hot zones is declared by the CDC or the White House Coronavirus Task Force, which is if you have in the last 2 weeks less than 100 new cases per 100,000 individuals. So but what we have in the state, though, we have, unlike almost every other state that's having problems right now, we have a statewide problem. We have 61 of our 64 parishes that are considered by the metrics used by the White House of 100 new cases per 100,000 individuals. 61 of our 64 parishes meet that metric. And so the problem is there is no place in the state that is not seeing significant increases in the number of cases. The place we're doing best right now, ironically, and I don't think it's a surprise given that the measures that were taken by Mayor Cantrell in New Orleans, but the place we're doing best is in Region 1 in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And so we have almost the exact inverse of what we had back in March and April, where New Orleans really was the hotspot and the rest of the state was doing a little bit better. Now we're seeing the exact opposite.
Excuse me, Mr. Matthew, time for one more quick question, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this real quickly. A lot of people say the governor's overstepped his bounds here, et cetera. You hear that from a lot of folks. Real quick, can the governor do things like mandate me be tested? Can the governor ultimately mandate me be vaccinated? Where legally do we stand with regard to that?
So first, I can tell you that's not something that has ever been discussed with the governor. It's not something that has ever been considered of requiring people to be tested or to be vaccinated or to.
But is that in his authority?
Frankly, it's not something that we've considered, so I can't give you an opinion of whether it's within his authority or not. I don't expect that that's something that is going to be seriously considered. I think what the governor has hoped from the very beginning is that people follow the advice of the White House, people follow the advice of the CDC, and people follow the advice of the public health experts. The very measures that the governor has taken have been expressly recommended by the White House for Louisiana, of mandating face masks, of reducing crowd sizes, and closing bars have all been expressly recommended for Louisiana from the White House. And so these measures are not something that were taken without careful consideration, and knowing that they work and knowing that what we can do with those measures will slow down the spread and keep people healthier and keep people from going to the hospital and passing away.